A pleasant day to all, especially to my dear Professor Neveline Cabotaye. Thank you for this chance to share my report entitled Conflict and Negotiation. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Ms. Caitlin Rosales Alcanieses, a graduate of Kolehiyo ng Lungsod ng Batangas with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Commerce, major in Business Management. I worked before at RTF Scientific Instrument Trading as an office administrator. And also, I served at Bangko Kabayan Rural Bank Incorporation as loan staff and bookkeeper for almost 2 years. While at present, I am working at Almana General Hospital as purchasing officer here in Al Khobar, Saudi Arabia since November 2012. And to give you a background of my present work assignments, my responsibility is to coordinate all types of purchase requirements and requests coming from all medical and non-medical departments. It is also my duty and responsibility to handle received material requests and obtain clarifications from originator of request where necessary, to invite quotations from suitable vendors, and ensures that all quotations contains all essential information and received in good time. I am also preparing the tabular analysis of all of the quotations which I received and finalizing selection of vendor in consultation with our purchase manager. It is also my job to obtain samples from suppliers for approval of the user department whenever necessary. I also need to check and arrange all purchase orders before sending it to corresponding signatories, then to the corresponding vendors. Our job will only end until the requestor receives the requested items. I think this is a good topic to discuss in relation to my previous and present work experiences. That's why I chose this report. We are all encountering this not only within an entire organization but in our daily living as well. To start my report, let us define the word conflict. What is conflict? Conflict is an inevitable part of human relationships. Depending on how it is approached and managed, conflict can be either constructive or destructive. Conflict arises when people disagree over something perceived as important. We live in communities and families with people who may not see things as we do. Conflicts occur on a daily basis, sometimes as small disputes, sometimes as violent battles. We each respond to conflicts based on our own particular personality and cultural background. People have different motivations, beliefs, values, and goals. Two people or groups can perceive and interpret the same situation very differently. The way others respond to conflict may confuse or offend us. Problems and conflicts are natural in our daily work, and the key is finding the right way to overcome them and continue working productively. One tool is to work to overcome our own perceptions and prejudices so we can see the other person's viewpoint. To resolve a conflict, we must understand our own role and how we are seen by others. The most common forms of conflict resolution are negotiation, mediation, community conferencing, conflict transformation, and peer mediation. Which approach is best depends on the nature of the conflict and the parties. There are also strategies to manage conflicts. Conflicts, like the people in them, are unique. They exist in particular contexts that are the result of the merging of culture, events, and history. There is no set template or correct method that will work in all situations. Sometimes it requires many strategies to bring about a successful resolution. First, when dealing with a conflict, your goal should of course be to achieve a desirable result. To do so, the conflicting parties must be given time to air out their hurts, frustrations, and disappointments to other party. Create a space for mutual participation of all parties. Use of force is obviously undesirable. Perhaps less obviously, resort to the court system is often undesirable as well. Court proceedings can divide families and communities for long periods of time. The feelings of being dragged to court, of course, whether by another individual, family, or organization, leaves a lasting, bitter memory that can spill over to one's children and colleagues. Let us study what is the first one is adjudication. What is adjudication? Adjudication processes do not encourage much participation, while on the other hand, arbitration, which is often used traditionally. It carries cultural values of cohesiveness of the family, community, or organization. Parties to a conflict often cooperate with the decision of arbitrators with little or no protest. The disadvantage only of arbitration is that the younger person is usually asked to apologize to the older person, regardless of the merits of the dispute. The third one is negotiation and reconciliation, which shows that an increased level of participation is possible. Negotiation and mediation open up the opportunities for deeper engagements and deeper resolutions of conflicts. Attitude is important. The attitudes and perceptions of conflicting parties are key to finding out how to resolve a conflict and to whether a conflict will escalate or be resolved amicably. The following are some general points to consider. First one, respect the dignity of others. Next, respect the customs and cultures of others. Avoid being demanding. Try to understand rather than judge. Use I statements rather than accusatory you statements. Be patient with the process. Be self-critical regarding your own mistakes. Do not be afraid to ask for help if needed. It is easy to misinterpret or misperceive the intentions behind a person's behavior. In conflict situations, it is common for people to attribute the other side's behavior to personal and internal factors such as their personality, and to attribute their own side's behavior to situational factors such as a poor economy or a drought. This self-justifying viewpoint makes it easy to blame a problem on the opposite party without reflecting on one's own action. It is important to remember to take a step back when managing any conflict and to try to perceive the problem from the other party's viewpoint. In many conflicts, there is no one at fault, but simply a case of two groups perceiving the origins of a problem differently. That's it. And a timeout to encourage self-reflection can help keep the lid on hostilities. Let's go to cultural variations in behavior. Motivations, social orientations, and cultural perspectives influence the way in which people construe others' behavior. Some cultures place a greater emphasis on the collective or community, whereas other cultures are more individualistic. And there are also various types of conflict. The first one is the relationship conflicts. Relationship conflicts occur because of the presence of strong negative emotions, misperceptions, or stereotypes, poor communication or miscommunication, or repetitive negative behaviors. Relationship problems often fuel disputes and lead to an unnecessary escalating spiral of destructive conflict. Supporting the safe and balanced expression of perspectives and emotions for acknowledgement is one effective approach to managing relational conflict. The second type of conflict is the data conflicts. Data conflicts occur when people lack information necessary to make wise decisions, are misinformed, disagree on which data is relevant, interpret information differently, or have competing assessment procedures. Some data conflicts may be unnecessary since they are caused by poor communication between the people in conflict. Other data conflicts may be genuine incompatibilities associated with data collection, interpretation, or communication. Most data conflicts will have data solutions. The third one is interest conflicts or interest conflict. Interest conflict is caused by competition over perceived incompatible needs. Conflicts of interest result when one or more of the parties believe that in order to satisfy his or her needs, the needs and interests of an opponent must be sacrificed. Interest-based conflict will commonly be expressed in positional terms. A variety of interests and intentions underlie and motivate positions in negotiation and must be addressed for maximized resolution. Interest-based conflicts may occur over substantive issues such as money, physical resources, time, etc. Procedural issues, which are the way that the dispute is to be resolved, and psychological issues, or the perception of trust, fairness, desire for participation, respect, etc. For an interest-based dispute to be resolved, parties must be assisted to define and express their individual interest so that all of these interests may be jointly addressed. Interest-based conflict is best resolved through the maximizing integration of the parties' respective interests, positive intention, and desired experiential outcomes. The fourth type of conflict is structural conflict. Structural conflicts are caused by forces external to the people in dispute. Limited physical resources or authority, geographic constraints, distance or proximity, time, organizational changes, and so forth can make structural conflict seem like a crisis. It can be helpful to assist parties in conflict to appreciate the external forces and constraints bearing upon them. Structural conflicts will often have structural solutions. Parties' appreciation that conflict has an external source can have the effect of them coming to jointly address the imposed difficulties. And the last type of conflict is value conflict. Value conflicts are caused by perceived or actual incompatible belief systems. Values are beliefs that people use to give meaning to their lives. Values explain what is good or bad, right or wrong, just or unjust. Differing values need not cause conflict. People can live together in harmony with different value systems. Value disputes arise only when people attempt to force one set of values on others or lay claim to exclusive value systems that do not allow for divergent beliefs. It is of no use to try to change value and belief systems during relatively short and strategic mediation interventions. It can, however, be helpful to support each participant's expression of their values and beliefs for acknowledgement by the other party. What is good or bad, right or wrong, just or unjust. Differing values need not cause conflict. People can live together in harmony with different value systems. Value disputes arise only when people attempt to force one set of values on others or lay claim to exclusive value systems that do not allow for divergent beliefs. It is of no use to try to change value and belief systems during relatively short and strategic mediation interventions. It can, however, be helpful to support each participant's expression of their values and beliefs for acknowledgement by the other party. We are, of course, encountering various types of conflicts and negotiations. I just want to share my personal experience in relation to the topic, and this is about my previous work in the bank operation. I was engaged in various phases of negotiations. I encountered a lot of people within the operation. Aside from loan documentation and release, I am also seeing various types of clients, most especially the borrowers, depositors, walk-in customers that avail sponsored product of the bank, like various types of remittance services, etc. I am also monitoring checks, life and fire insurances. Of course, a lot of conflicts arose that time. My position before was, I think, the most loaded one in the branch when it comes to duties and responsibilities. And I think that the major cause is the improper distribution of labor and limited number of employee as well. There are lots of sacrifices when I handled that position. Even the time for my family was also sacrificed. Supposedly, my duty is 8 to 5 p.m. But most of the times I am working beyond 9 p.m. especially when it's end of the month and there's a loan release for the next day. Even my health was sacrificed because even during lunchtime there are clients to be assisted. With this load of work, I sometimes cram and forget things resulting to some mistakes. Because of this, the relationship in the branch was also affected, provoked by tension and stress of the unpleasant, cramming working situation. But eventually, these concerns were resolved due to some actions done by the management. They hired additional staff and resolved some issues concerning duties and responsibilities. Free your mind, have a habit of writing things down. I think this should be done by everybody. Because of these personal experiences, I learned how to find ways how to be organized and not to forget anything by writing things down. I always have my notebook to remind me of things I need to prioritize. Every morning, I'm making it sure that I check my notes to start the day right, and before I leave the office, I am writing whatever is needed to be accomplished for the next day. To continue my report, let us differentiate between the traditional human relations and interactionist views of conflict. First, let's discuss first the three general schools of thoughts relating to conflict, which is the three I mentioned a while ago. The traditional and the oldest view of conflict assumes that all disagreement is harmful and should be avoided, while the human relations view argues that conflict is a natural occurrence in all groups and as such it should be managed and not eliminated. The third one is the interactionist view, which proposes that conflict can be a positive force in a group and explicitly argues that some conflict is necessary for a group to perform effectively. According to the interactionist view, conflict can be functional or dysfunctional. Functional conflict supports the goals of the group and improves its performance, while dysfunctional conflict hinders group performance. Let us outline the conflict process. The process of conflict consists of 5 stages: the potential opposition, cognition and personalization, intentions, behavior, and outcomes. The first step in the conflict process is the presence of conditions that create opportunities for conflict to arise. These conditions may be condensed into 3 categories: communication, structure, and personal variables. Communication variables include semantic difficulties, misunderstandings, and noise in communication channels. Structural variables include factors such as size, degree of specialization, jurisdictional clarity, member goal compatibility, leadership styles, reward systems, and the degree of dependence between groups. Personal variables, in contrast, include personality, emotions, and values. The second state of the conflict process is cognition and personalization. For conflict to exist, perception is required. Further, the conflict must be felt and individuals must become emotionally involved. The third state in the conflict process is intentions. Intentions intervene between people's perceptions and emotions, and their overt behavior may be described according to 2 dimensions: cooperativeness and assertiveness. The way in which individuals handle conflicts has been characterized into 5 distinct intentions: competing, or assertive and uncooperative; collaborating, which is assertive and cooperative; avoiding, which is unassertive and uncooperative; accommodating, which is unassertive and cooperative; and compromising, which is mid-range on both assertive and cooperative. Let's go to the next stage of the conflict process, which is the behavior. This is where conflict becomes visible, with statements, actions, and reactions made by the conflicting parties. Managers may control the level of conflict through conflict management and conflict stimulation techniques. Conflict management techniques include problem solving, superordinate goals, expansion of resources, avoidance, smoothing, compromise, authoritative command, altering the human variable, and altering the structural variables. In the event that a manager wishes to stimulate conflict, techniques such as communication, bringing in outsiders, restructuring the organization, and appointing a devil's advocate may be used. And the final stage of the conflict process is outcomes. These outcomes may be either functional, resulting in an improvement in group performance, or dysfunctional, hindering group performance. Of course, if there are negative sides of conflict, there are also positive sides. Let's discuss first a positive. The positive sides of conflict or effects of conflicts are increased involvement, increased cohesion, innovation and creativity, personal growth and change, clarification of key issues, organizational vibrancy threatened. While the negative sides are the unresolved anger, personality clashes, less self-esteem, inefficiency, diversion of energy from work, and psychological well-being of individual and group. Let's describe the 5 conflict handling intentions. The first one is completing intention. Completing intention is defined as a desire to satisfy one's interest regardless of the impact on the other party to the conflict. While the second one is collaborating intention. Collaborating intention is a situation in which the parties to a conflict each desire to satisfy fully the concerns of all parties. The next one is avoiding intention. Avoiding intention is the desire to withdraw from or suppress a conflict. The next type of intention is accommodating intention, the willingness of one party in a conflict to place the opponent's interest above his or her own. And the last one is the compromising intention, which is a situation in which each party to a conflict is willing to give up something. Okay, let's define conflict management. What is conflict management? Conflict management is the use of resolution and stimulation techniques to achieve the desired level of conflict. And the other one is outcome. Under these are functional outcomes from conflict, which are increased group performance, improved quality of decisions, stimulation of creativity and innovation, encouragement of interest and curiosity, provision of a medium for problem solving, creation of an environment for self-evaluation and change. The next one is creating functional conflict, which is reward descent and punish conflict avoiders. And under the outcome also is dysfunctional outcomes from conflict, which are the development of discontent or dissatisfaction, reduced group effectiveness, retarded communication, reduced group cohesiveness, infighting among group members, overcomes group goals. And there are also conflict management techniques. I just make it easy to discuss. I will enumerate the conflict resolution techniques. The first one is the problem solving, then superordinate goals, then the next is expansion of resources, the next one is smoothing, then authoritative command, then the last one is altering the human variable. Conflict resolution techniques, let's discuss it one by one. The first one is problem solving, which is a face-to-face meeting with conflicting parties for the purpose of identifying the problem and resolving it through open discussion. While superordinate goals, this is creating a short or a shared goal that cannot be attained without the cooperation of each of the conflicting parties. The next one is expansion of resources, which is when a conflict is caused by the scarcity of resources, expansion of resources can create the win-win solution. Smoothing. Smoothing, which is under also conflict resolution technique, is playing down differences while emphasizing common interests between the conflicting parties. Then, authoritative command. This is, or management uses its formal authority to resolve the conflicts. And in altering the human variables, it uses behavioral change techniques as human relations training and alter attitude and behaviors that cause conflict. Okay, let's go to negotiation. Negotiation is a dialogue between two or more people or parties intended to reach an understanding, resolve points of difference, to gain advantage for an individual or collective, or to craft outcomes to satisfy various interests. Negotiation occurs in business, non-profit organizations, government branches, legal proceedings, among nations, and in personal situations such as marriage, divorce, parenting, and everyday life. The study of this subject is called negotiation theory. Professional negotiators are often specialized, such as swing negotiators, leverage buyout negotiators, peace negotiators, hostage negotiators, or may work under the titles such as diplomats, legislators, or brokers. There are strategies also of negotiations. Negotiations can take a wide variety of forms, from a trained negotiator acting on behalf of a particular organization or position in a formal setting, to an informal negotiation between friends. And also, negotiation can be contrasted with mediation, where a neutral third party listens to each side's arguments and attempts to help craft an agreement between the parties. It can also be compared with arbitration, which resembles a legal proceeding. And also in arbitration, both sides make an argument as to the merits of their case, and the arbitrator decides the outcome. This negotiation is also sometimes called positional or hard bargaining negotiation. Let's go to the distributive negotiation first. Distributive negotiation is also sometimes called the positional or hard bargaining negotiation. It tends to approach negotiation on the model of haggling in a market. In a distributive negotiation, each side often adopts an extreme position, knowing that it will not be accepted, and then employs a combination of guile, bluffing, and brinkmanship in order to cede as little as possible before reaching a deal. Distributive bargainers conceive of negotiation as a process of distributing a fixed amount of value. The term distributive implies that there is a finite amount of the thing being distributed or divided among the people involved. Sometimes, this type of negotiation is referred to as the distribution of a fixed pie. There is only so much to go around, but the proportion to be distributed is variable. Distributive negotiation is also sometimes called win-lose because of the assumption that one person's gain results in another person's loss. And a distributive negotiation often involves people who have never had a previous interactive relationship, nor are they likely to do so again in the near future. Simple everyday examples will be buying a car or a house. Let's go to integrative negotiation. Integrative negotiation is also sometimes called interest-based or principled negotiation, and it is a set of techniques that attempts to improve the quality and likelihood of negotiated agreement by providing an alternative to traditional distributive negotiation techniques. While distributive negotiation assumes there is a fixed amount of value, or what's so-called a fixed pie, to be divided between the parties, integrative negotiation often attempts to create value in the course of the negotiation or expand the pie. It focuses on the underlying interest of the parties rather than their arbitrary starting positions, approaches negotiation as a shared problem rather than a personalized battle, and insists upon adherence to objective principled criteria as the basis for agreement. Integrative negotiation often involves a higher degree of trust and the forming of a relationship. It can also involve creative problem solving that aims to achieve mutual gains, and it is also sometimes called win-win negotiation. Let's discuss the tactics. There are many different ways to categorize the essential elements of negotiation. One view of negotiation involves three basic elements. There are the process, behavior, and substance. The process refers to how the parties negotiate. The context of the negotiations, the parties to the negotiations, the tactics used by the parties, and the sequence and stages in which all of these play out. Behavior refers to the relationship among these parties, the communication between them, and the styles they adopt. The substance refers to what the parties negotiate over, which are the agenda, the issues, the options, and the agreement reached at the end. Another view of negotiation comprises four elements. which are the strategy, the process, the tools, and tactics. Strategy comprises the top-level goals, typically including relationship and the final outcome. Processes and tools include the steps that will be followed and the roles taken in both preparing for and negotiating with other parties. Tactics include more detailed statements and actions and responses to others' statements and actions. Some add to this persuasion and influence, asserting that these have become integral to modern-day negotiation success, and so should not be omitted. Let's go to and let's discuss how to employ an advocate. A skilled negotiator may serve as an advocate for one party to the negotiation. The advocate attempts to obtain the most favorable outcomes possible for that party. In this process, the negotiator attempts to determine the minimum outcome the other party is or parties are willing to accept, then adjust their demands accordingly. A successful negotiation in the advocacy approach is when the negotiator is able to obtain all or most of the outcomes their party desires, but without driving the other party to permanently break off negotiations unless the best alternative to a negotiated agreement or BATNA is acceptable. Skilled negotiators may use a variety of tactics ranging from negotiation hypnosis to a straightforward presentation of demands or setting of preconditions, to more deceptive approaches such as cherry-picking, intimidation, and salami tactics may also play a part in swaying the outcome of negotiations. Another negotiation tactic is the bad guy or good guy. Bad guy or good guy is when one negotiator acts as a bad guy by using anger and threats. The other negotiator acts as a good guy by being considerate and understanding. The good guy blames the bad guy for all the difficulties while trying to get concessions and agreement from the opponent. Another negotiation is leaning back and whispering. This establishes a dominant physical position, thus intimidating your counterpart. Perspective taking for integrative negotiation. What is perspective taking? Perspective taking can be helpful for two reasons: that it can help self-centered negotiators to seek mutually beneficial solutions, and it increases the likelihood of log rolling. Social motivation can increase the chances of a party conceding to a negotiation. While concession is mandatory for negotiations, research shows that people who concede more quickly are less likely to explore all integrative and mutually beneficial solutions. Therefore, conceding reduces the chance of an integrative negotiation. Let's tackle about these negotiation styles. Kenneth W. Thomas identified 5 styles or responses to negotiation. These 5 strategies have been frequently described in the literature and are based on the dual concern model. The dual concern model of conflict resolution is a perspective that assumes individuals' preferred method of dealing with conflict is based on 2 themes or dimensions, which are a concern for self and a concern for others. Based on this model, individuals balance the concern for personal needs and interests with the needs and interests of others. The following 5 styles can be used based on individuals' preferences depending on their pro-self and pro-social goals. These styles can change over time, and individuals can have strong dispositions towards numerous styles. The first style is accommodating style, wherein individuals who enjoy solving the other party's problems and preserving personal relationships. Accommodators are sensitive to the emotional states, body language, and verbal signals of the other parties. They can, however, feel taken advantage of in situations when the other party places little emphasis on the relationship. The second style is avoiding style. Individuals who do not like to negotiate and don't do it unless warranted. When negotiating, avoiders tend to defer and dodge the confrontational aspects of negotiating. However, they may be perceived as tactful and diplomatic. The third style is collaborating style. wherein individuals who enjoy negotiations that involve solving tough problems in creative ways. And collaborators are good at using negotiations to understand the concerns and interests of other parties. They can, however, create problems by transforming simple situations into more complex ones. While competing style, here are individuals who enjoy negotiations because they present an opportunity to win something. While the last style is compromising style, wherein these are comprised of individuals who are either eager to close the deal by doing what is fair and equal for all parties involved in the negotiation. Compromisers can be useful when there is limited time to complete the deal. However, compromisers often unnecessarily rush the negotiation process and make concessions too quickly. Let's proceed to the cultural differences in negotiations. There are a number of cultural differences in negotiations. When comparing US and Japanese negotiators, US managers tend to make early offers which anchor negotiations. In contrast, Japanese managers tended to share more information and participate in more integrative negotiations. When comparing North American, Russian, and Arab negotiators, North American managers tended to rely more on facts and logic, while Arab negotiators tended to appeal to emotion. Russian negotiators, they focused on ideals in their negotiations. And there are even cultural differences in nonverbal communication revealed in research of North American, Japanese, and Brazilian negotiators. Let's also discuss the issues on negotiation. The first one is the role of personality traits in negotiation. Traits do not appear to have a significantly direct effect on the outcomes of either bargaining or negotiating processes. And the next issue in negotiation is gender differences. Women negotiate no differently from men, although men apparently negotiate slightly better outcomes. Men and women with similar power bases use the same negotiating styles, and women's attitudes towards negotiation and their success as negotiators are less favorable than men's. And before ending this report, let's give some tips for managing workplace conflict. First one, we need to build good relationships before conflict occurs. Also, do not let small problems escalate. Deal with them as they arise. Respect differences. Listen to others' perspectives on the conflict situation. Acknowledge feelings before focusing on facts. That's better also. And focus on solving problems, not changing people. Aside from that, if you can't resolve the problem, turn to someone who can help. And lastly, remember to adapt your style to the situation and persons involved. And this is how my report ends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching.